So, last time we looked at the demand side, that is the buyer's side of the economy, and how a buyer takes his decision based on what factors. If there is an increase in price, what he would do. If there are changes in any other non-price factors, how that affects his demand. We are still on lecture note 2 on the supply side. Now we are talking about supply. So, just like the demand side, on the supply side, the quantity supplied from the seller's perspective. So, now we are looking at things from the seller's perspective. So, quantity supplied also depends on two sets of factors, price, and that of course is the own price, just like you had for the buyers, and some non-price factors. Okay. When we look at the dynamics of just these two, that is when we look at the relationship between quantity supplied and the own price of the commodity in question, that is known as the law of supply. Okay, just like the buyer's side, law of supply. And the law of supply states that if the own price rises, then the quantity supplied rises, and if the own price goes down, then quantity supplied goes down. Now, this will seem logical if you think yourself as a seller instead of a buyer. If you are offered a higher price, you would be willing to sell more, and if you are offered a lower price, you would be willing to sell less, right? So, this makes sense. Now, you can see that we no longer have an inverse relationship, rather we have a positive or a direct relationship, right? So, there is a direct relationship. So, the law of supply formally states that there is a direct relationship between the own price and the quantity supplied of the commodity, ceteris paribus. What does that mean? That means these non-price factors are constant at that point. Nothing is changing in terms of the non-price factors, and we are only analyzing the relationship between price and quantity supplied. And just like the buyer's side, when you represent the law of supply in terms of a diagram, in terms of a graph, what you get is called the supply curve. So, you have the same two-dimensional space where quantity is measured on the x-axis, and this is now quantity supplied. So, basically that is your QS, and you have the own price of the commodity on the vertical axis, and any positive relationship means that as quantity increases, the price would also increase. So, that would be given by an upward sloping line, and we call that the S curve or the supply curve, right. Now, just like you had on the buyer's side, if we start with an initial combination of price and quantity, that is, you have a quantity supplied Q1 when the price is P1. If there is any increase in price, let us say P2, then just like the buyer's side, there is a movement along the curve. Okay. But please note that this upward movement leads to an increase in the quantity supplied, whereas there was a decrease in the quantity demanded, right. And that is happening due to nothing else but the positive nature or the direct nature of the relationship. Had this been an inverse relationship, it would be just like the demand curve case. And if the price goes down, then of course you have a movement in the downward direction such that you have a decrease in the quantity supplied. Simple. This is just like the buyer's side. So, price up, upward movement, price down, downward movement, but here when there is up, there is increase in quantity supplied. When there is down, there is decrease in quantity supplied. Do you have any questions up to this point? Pretty simple. Now, just like we did last time, now we need to analyze what are these non-price factors that we are talking about. What are the non-price factors that change supply? Now, just like on the demand side, I gave you an acronym, a word to remember. Also on the supply side, I will give you a word to remember. Ties. Okay? And once again, this is, I am giving you the word. It's not there in the textbook. If you want, you use it. If not, you don't use it. Okay? It helps me to remember it this way. Now, here, T no longer stands for taste of the sellers. T stands for technology. Technology that is used to produce the good. Technology used to produce the good. Okay? Technology as in it's a resource. Technology is a form of resource. So, the technology used to produce the good. I no longer stands for income. Now, it stands for input or ingredient. So, that is the raw material that goes into making the good. Okay. E stands for expectation, just like the demand side, but now it is the expectation of the seller or the supplier or the producer, whatever name you want to call it by, and S stands for the number of sellers in the market. Okay. So, now when we consider a change in any of these factors, any of these 4 factors, assuming that the price of the good, the own price of the good is constant, if we consider dynamic change in any one of those factors, and we look at the relationship with quantity supplied, what we get is a shift of the S curve. It is no longer a movement, just like the buyer's side. Okay. Now, let us kind of go through those factors one by one. Technology. What do you think will happen if there is better technology? For the seller, what happens if the technology is better? What is a seller able to do? Save money. By save money, what does it mean? It means it is cheaper for the seller now to produce. If it is cheaper for the seller to produce, will he produce more or less? He will produce more because he is spending less on the production. If he produces more, he will sell more. Correct? So, what should happen to supply? Supply will go up, and every time supply goes up, it is a right shift, just like you had on the buyer's side. And every time supply goes down, no matter which factor causes it, it is going to be a left shift of the S curve. And this should be in the box. That means this is for you to remember always. This will always happen, irrespective of which factor is causing it. So, that means we can say that improvement in technology will lead to an increase in supply or a right shift of the supply curve, and any disimprovement in the technology will lead to a left shift of the supply curve. So, improvement in technology is possible. That is going to reduce the cost of production, hence take supply up, right shift of the supply curve. Any disimprovement in technology will drive up the cost of production, hence reduce the supply, which is a left shift of the supply curve. I am not drawing it on the board, but is it okay? You have the diagrams with you, okay, the ones that are posted on your blackboard. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Now, here we are talking about inputs and ingredients. Please remember, we are just not talking about the price of the inputs, we are also talking about the availability. So, sometimes the question may be telling you about the price of an input, or it may be talking to you about the availability of the input. Now, please note that input is also something that goes into production, right? Just like technology, it is a resource. If the input price becomes expensive, what should happen then? If inputs are costly, what should happen to cost of production? Goes up, because now it is expensive to buy the raw materials. Cost of production going up means now the seller spends more money in producing. So, he cannot produce as much. If he cannot produce as much, he cannot sell as much. So, supply will go down. So, can we say if the input price goes up, then supply goes down? That is a left shift. And if the input price goes down, then now it is cheaper to make the good. So, the seller can make more and hence sell more. That means a increase in supply or right shift of supply. Okay. What about availability? If inputs are more available, then it is cheaper to make the good. Supply will go up. If inputs are scarce, it is more expensive to make the good. Supply will go down. Okay. And I gave you an example of input last time, if you remember, sugar and soda. Sugar goes into making soda. It's an ingredient. Microchip and computers. Chips are used in making computers. So, that's an ingredient, right? What about DVD and DVD players? DVDs and DVD players. Complements. One does not go into making the other. Okay. Now, moving on, expectation of the seller, just like you had last time. Here we are talking about expectation, but we are talking about the expectation about future own price and what happens to the supply today. Okay. So, we are thinking about the seller's expectation about own price, but it is about future own price. It is not about the own price today. Okay. So, still there is no change in the price today and hence it qualifies as a shift and not a movement. Okay. So, now if the seller expects the own price in the future to rise, what should he do today from the seller's perspective? Will he sell today? He expects things to be expensive in the future. So, is he going to sell today? No, he will wait because he knows that when prices become higher in the market, he can gain more by selling it for a higher price. So, today's supply, the supply today is going to be low. That is going to be a left shift today, okay, because he is going to probably keep the goods in his inventory, not leave it for sale, right. Similarly, if the seller expects things to become cheap in the future, then he rather sell it off today because he will make a loss otherwise. So, in that case, the supply today is going to be higher because the seller would not want to make less money in the future. Okay. The last one, the simplest one, number of sellers. If you have more people selling stuff, there is more of the good in the market, there is more supply of the good in the market without change in price. If there are less number of sellers, there is less of the good in the market, right. So, you have some food stalls. If there is a fair or some festival, there will be more food stalls, temporary food stalls coming up, and there will be more supply of hot dogs, Independence Day or things like that. Okay, Independence Day parade, or you have more food stalls temporary set up, there is more supply. If the number of sellers go down, then supply will be lower. Any questions you have? Because now we are going to move on to the trickier part, relatively trickier. Any questions so far? Everyone has understood what is the difference between a movement and a shift, both on the demand side and the supply side? Are you good? Okay. Now, so we know what happens on the demand side, we know what happens on the supply side, but we are not so much concerned about demand and supply in isolation, but we want to study about both these groups together, both these economic agents, buyers and sellers, and so we must bring them together and make them interact. And like I told you when we were doing lecture note 1, the place that the buyers and the sellers interact is called the market. So, now we are going to bring the demand and the supply curves together and draw a diagram for the market. Okay. So, that means all we are trying to do is we are trying to do a graphical representation of the market. This this is not good for him. So you still have quantity. Now please note that since we are going to bring demand and supply together, this quantity is no longer the quantity demanded or the quantity supplied. It's just the quantity at which buyers want to buy and sellers want to sell. It's that quantity. So basically this is QD and QS both measured here, right? That's why I'm putting it as Q. And here you have the own price of the good. Okay, so you have a demand curve which will be downward sloping. You have a supply curve which will be upward sloping, right? And you know, theoretically you know that there has to be a point in the market, or market will try to move towards a point where these buyers will agree with the sellers, or in other words, the price that the buyers are willing to offer must be equal to the price that the sellers are willing to accept. So buyers' willingness to pay must match with the seller's willingness to accept, and there will be one unique point where that matches, and that unique point will be called the equilibrium of the market. Now diagrammatically, that unique point happens at the intersection of these two curves. That is exactly where D is equal to S. At no other point you will see that happening. So this is basically the point where your QD is, we had capital letters, right? You have your QD is equal to QS. So we just call that QE, which means equilibrium quantity or the agreed quantity between buyers and sellers. And here you have the price where the willingness to pay of the buyer has matched the willingness to accept of the seller. We just call it the equilibrium price, PE. So QE and PE are equilibrium quantity and price in the market. So it's basically the point of agreement. Okay. Now please note that if I move away from the equilibrium in this direction or in that direction, okay, what happens? There is a divergence between demand and supply. Let's consider the upward movement. If I move away from, and let me call this equilibrium E. So if I move away from equilibrium E in the upward direction, please note at any price in that direction where P1 is greater than PE, so at any price above the equilibrium price, please note that there is a divergence created between demand and supply. At the price P1, this is your quantity demanded, right? Whereas that is your quantity supplied, isn't it? So what has happened? Quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded at P1. People are not willing to buy at that high price. They were okay here, but they are not okay there. So the goods that are available in the market are not getting sold. So now if sellers have to sell their goods, what should they do? They have to bring the price down. So that means any time when the price rises above the equilibrium, there is surplus created in the market, and surplus is nothing but a situation where quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded, and whenever there is a surplus created in the market, something in the market has to change on the buyer side or the seller side. In this case we saw it's the seller side, right, which will bid the price back to the equilibrium. Okay. Similarly, if something happened in the market which takes the price down below the equilibrium price, let's say to a level like P2, please note that once again a divergence is created between supply and demand. At the price P2, this is your quantity supplied. Please note I am reading from the respective curves. Wherever that is cutting the supply curve, that is your quantity supplied. Wherever that is cutting your demand curve, that's your quantity demanded. Right? So in this case, please see that the quantity demanded is now greater than quantity supplied, right? That is your quantity demanded, this is your quantity supplied. So the quantity demanded is greater, isn't it? So that means whenever the price falls below the equilibrium, there will be a divergence created between quantity demanded and quantity supplied, such that the quantity demanded is greater and you have a shortage. Okay. Now surplus is also sometimes called excess supply. Excess supply. Shortage is also sometimes called excess demand. Okay, so whenever the P1 is greater than PE, you have surplus, and whenever the price is less than the equilibrium price, you have a shortage or excess demand. Now what does that mean? That means more people want to buy the good than what is available in the market. Okay, so 10 people want to buy the book, but only, let's say, 2 books are available in the market. So who will get the book? Who will end up getting the book? People who can pay a higher price, right? If there are only 2 available in the market and nothing else is changing in the market, that means no more extra books are coming into the market. Among the 10, the people who can pay the highest price will end up getting those 2 books, correct? So that means the buyers will bid the price up whenever there is a shortage. In both cases, please note that any movement away from the equilibrium will change something in the market which takes the market back to the equilibrium. And that is the reason that we said that a free market always tries to move towards an equilibrium. Equilibrium is a stationary state. It's a steady stationary state. That means any movement away, any divergence away from the equilibrium will change something in the market or create market forces in such a way that the market will try to converge back to the equilibrium. Okay? Is that clear? Okay. Now we have the market, we have the demand and the supply, but we have seen that often there will be things except the price, there will be often non-price factors which can cause change in demand and which can cause change in supply, right? Now the next question is, if demand changes or if supply changes. Now when I say demand changes, what do I mean by that? What is the meaning of that? Demand changes. What does that mean? Either right shift or left shift of demand curve, right? Demand changes. So if demand changes, that means if there is a right shift or left shift of demand curve, either there is an increase or a decrease of demand, we want to see what is the effect on the market. Okay? What is the effect on the market? Similarly, if there was a change in supply, that is right shift or left shift of the supply curve, what would be the effect on this market? Okay? So now you can think of different possibilities. There can be only demand change, like a demand increase or a demand decrease, or there can be just a supply change, a supply increase or a supply decrease, or there can be the 2 things happening together at the same time, something happening in the tribe factors and something happening in the ties factors happening at the same time, right? So now this brings us to the tricky part of this chapter, which is single shifts and simultaneous shifts. So first we are going to deal with single shifts. In single shifts, we can have 4 different cases. First one, demand increase. That means we are considering a right shift of the curve, and that could be due to anything like an increase in the number of buyers, okay, or it could be something like decrease in the price of increase in the price of substitute, right, isn't it, or increase or decrease in the price of complements. Something like that can cause an increase in demand, a right shift of the demand curve. Case number 2, there can be a decrease in the demand, left shift, caused by anything in the tribe factors. Similarly, you could have a supply increase, a supply decrease. Now, very important thing for you to remember, please keep it as a note. On the exam, if you have a question, if you read the language of the question and you are able to identify that there is only one kind of shift happening, either a demand shift or a supply shift, you may draw the diagram, you may draw the market diagram and figure out the answer. Okay? In case of simultaneous shift, that will not be true, and I will tell you why that is not true. In case of single shift, you can draw the diagram and you can figure out the answer. Let's see how. So we have a market diagram. Demand, supply, to begin with, that's the equilibrium quantity in the market, that's the equilibrium price in the market. With nothing else changing in the market, if there is a right shift of the demand curve, then you have a new demand curve D dash, right? Please note that now your equilibrium point has also changed to E dash instead of E. Now you have another intersection point, that is the intersection point of the new demand curve with the old supply curve. As a result of which, please note that equilibrium quantity has gone up and equilibrium price has also gone up. Do you agree? Yes? Similarly, if I drew a market diagram for this case and try to draw them on your own, in that case I will get a demand shift to the left, a new equilibrium, and in that equilibrium your price would have gone down, your equilibrium quantity would also have gone down. Right? Are you following? That means even without drawing the diagram. Now if I were in your place in the exam, I will not waste time drawing the diagram. I will just read the question and try to figure out, is it a demand increase or a decrease? As soon as I know that it's a demand increase, I will know for certain that this will cause an increase in equilibrium quantity. It will also cause an increase in equilibrium price in the market. So for an increase, there will be an increase in both. And for a decrease, there will be a decrease in both. That is exactly what we saw. So a demand increase will increase both price and quantity, equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity in the market. A demand decrease will decrease equilibrium price and quantity in the market. That will always be true, irrespective of what is causing that change in demand, provided nothing has changed on the supply side, provided there is no shift of supply. There is only a single shift, that is on the demand side. Is that clear? Let's see what about the supply side. So now there is no change in demand, rather now you have a increase in supply, so it's a right shift of the supply curve. So supply curve shifts right, you have a new supply curve S dash, as a result of which you have a new equilibrium E dash. Please note, at the new equilibrium E dash, the quantity, the equilibrium quantity has increased, but the equilibrium price has gone down. Right? And if you draw it, you can figure it out on your own. You don't have to copy from the board. If you just shift that line to the right, you cannot get anything else but this. Similarly, now if I have a left shift of the supply, I have a new equilibrium. Please note that with the decrease in supply, quantity will go down, but equilibrium price has gone up, right? Right. So can I say that when supply increases, equilibrium quantity increases, but equilibrium price goes down? That is exactly what we saw in the diagram. And here, can I say that when supply goes down, equilibrium quantity goes down, but equilibrium price goes up? So for me, the important point to remember, the connection to draw, is that when I have a change in demand, both equilibrium price and quantity respond in the same direction. Increase for an increase, decrease for a decrease. As far as demand is concerned, always equilibrium price and quantity change in the same direction as the demand. Demand increase, both will increase. Demand decrease, both will decrease. If you remember that, you don't need to waste time drawing diagrams. But when we come to the supply side, quantity always reacts in the same direction as supply. For an increase in supply, you have an increase in quantity, but price reacts in the opposite direction, right? So that means equilibrium quantity is not the problematic guy. Equilibrium price sometimes creates the problems. It goes this way and that way. So quantity, you know for sure, as long as it's an increase, be it demand or supply, it will increase. As long as it's a decrease, be it demand or supply, it's going to be a decrease. But when it comes to equilibrium price, it's the same direction for a demand change and it's the opposite direction for a supply change. So when you're studying, that is how you should summarize. Okay? Good? Okay. Do you have any questions for me so far? And I hope you understand that this increase in demand could be caused by change in any of those strive factors, and this decrease or increase in supply could be caused by any of those ties factors. Can it be caused by a change in own price? No. Here we are not dealing with own price at all. We are not dealing with movements. Okay. Now, taking it one notch higher, what happens if you have simultaneous shifts? What will happen? So before going into that, let's summarize those last four that we did. Let's keep that on the board. Increase in demand implies increase in both. Decrease in demand implies decrease in both. Increase in supply means increase in equilibrium quantity, but decrease in equilibrium price. For a decrease in supply, you have a decrease in quantity, but an increase in price. So that's what we had last time from the single shifts. Now, what we are trying to say is what happens if these things happen together. A demand increase and a supply increase. A demand increase and a supply decrease. Okay? So now we are doing simultaneous shifts. Let these be there on the board. Now I can have the first one, which is a demand increase and a supply increase. I can have another one, which is a demand increase and a supply decrease. have a demand decrease and a supply increase, and finally I can have demand decrease and supply decrease. These are the 4 possibilities happening at the same time, and the same thing holds. When I say decrease, I mean a left shift in both cases. When I say an increase, I mean a right shift in both cases, and those would be caused by either the Tribe factors on the demand side or the Ties factors on the supply side. Okay. Now, when you have questions on simultaneous shift, when you read the language of the question and you know that something has changed on the demand side and something has changed on the supply side, my request to you is do not draw diagrams. You will confuse yourself. That's why it is kind of easier to remember the scheme of these things, because you will need it here as well. So, might as well kind of follow it here. Okay? Then it will be easier for you to combine. Do not draw diagrams in case of simultaneous shift, and I will tell you why. Okay, let's do the first one. So, if you have a demand increase, that's case 1 from here, right? So, what do you get? If you have a demand increase, as a result of that, your equilibrium quantity will increase, equilibrium price will also increase, right? If you have a supply increase, once again your equilibrium quantity will increase, but your equilibrium price will now go down, because it is in the reverse direction, because we have combined 1 and 3 from here, correct? So, now what happens if the question is asking you what finally happens to the equilibrium price and quantity in the market, then you do have a definite answer for equilibrium quantity. You do not have any problems with equilibrium quantity. This is problematic today. Equilibrium quantity will go up for sure. There is no problem. But you don't know, you don't have a definite answer for equilibrium price. Demand is taking it up, supply is taking it down, right? So, your answer is just that. You will just say equilibrium price is ambiguous or indeterminate or uncertain, whatever it may be. It can go up, it can go down, it can stay the same. That is what ambiguous means. Ambiguous or uncertain or indeterminate, different terminology, different ways of expressing, means it can go up or it can go down or stay same. And why does that happen? Why does this ambiguity happen? If you draw the diagram, that is the reason I am telling you not to draw the diagram, because if you draw the diagram, you cannot represent this ambiguity in your diagram. You will end up drawing one of these cases. You cannot draw all 3 at the same time. It will depend on the extent of your shift of the supply and the demand curve. Do you see what I am saying? If you make the shift of the supply curve larger than the shift of the demand curve, you will get the answer where your PE is going down. If you make the shift of the demand curve larger, you will get the answer where your PE is going up. And if you end up drawing precisely where the 2 shifts are exactly equal, you will see that your price is not changing. It is staying the same. That is why I am asking you not to draw the diagram, because it is not humanly possible for you to draw a diagram with all 3 cases. You will end up drawing one of them, whereas the answer is not that, right? But I can go a step higher to complicate things. I can go a step higher, give you this question, give you a increase in demand, let's say increase in the number of buyers, and also give you a situation of increase in the number of sellers. So, it is a demand increase and a supply increase, and then I tell you, tell me precisely when both equilibrium price and quantity will increase. So, I ask you for one definite case when given the increase in the number of buyers and an increase in the number of sellers, tell me when will both price and quantity in the market, equilibrium price and quantity in the market both increase. You do not have a problem with equilibrium quantity, because you know that for an increase in demand and supply, equilibrium quantity will increase irrespective of anything in the market. But your problem is with PE. equilibrium price. That is ambiguous. But here in this question, I am specifically asking you, when will PE rise? I am singling out one part. So please note that PE will rise provided this demand increase is greater than the supply increase. Why? Because it is the demand increase that raises the PE. So that pull, the pull of demand has to be larger than the pull of supply. Only then the equilibrium price will increase. So that means the idea is, if I try to kind of summarize that part, then I can say that equilibrium quantity will increase for sure, but there are three possibilities for equilibrium price. So equilibrium price can go up, it can go down, or stay same. P unchanged, stays same. Remember I said that if I put that bar, it means unchanged, correct? So when will PE go up? PE will go up provided the factor that is taking PE up is the stronger factor. So that means it will happen if the demand increase is greater than the supply increase. Then PE will be up. When you go home and you look at it, it will be clear. Now too many things are coming to you, that's why it's difficult for you to remember. It's difficult for anybody to remember. But now just concentrate on logically following. That what you are hearing, you don't have a question about that. Okay? PE will be up because I am saying demand takes PE up. So obviously that demand has to be the stronger force. Otherwise PE cannot go up. It will stay in an ambiguous stage, right? PE will be down provided the one that takes PE down is the stronger effect. Supply is the stronger effect. So just the other way round, when supply increase is the stronger one, right? And then PE will stay the same provided you cannot decide which one is stronger. So if both are exactly the same, if the demand change is exactly the same, then you have, your PE cannot change. Two buyers have entered the market, two sellers have also entered the market. So demand has gone up, supply has also gone up, but exactly by the same amount. Okay. In case of number 1, 5 buyers have come into the market, but 1 seller has come into the market. In case of number 2, 5 sellers, but 3 buyers. Do you see what I am saying? Let's quickly do the next one. Time, right? Okay. So now you have demand increase and supply decrease. So we are doing 1 and 4 together. From the left hand side of the board, we are looking at 1 and 4. Number 1 and number 4. So if demand goes up, both go up. Supply goes down, QE goes down, but PE goes up. Combining 1 and 4, right? So once again, you can see that for one of them, I don't have any issues. With PE, there is no issues whatsoever. PE, there is a definite answer. PE has gone up. There is a definite answer. There is no problem with PE. Can you see? So I have a definite answer for PE. But when it comes to QE, once again I can see arrows in opposite direction, right? So once again for QE, it is ambiguous. And when I say ambiguous, it means that there are 3 possibilities. Once again, QE may go up, QE can go down, or QE can stay same. Right? When will QE go up? Now can you try? When will QE go up? Okay, so Tyson says when demand increase is greater than the supply decrease. Will you agree? Yes, because it is the demand increase which is taking QE up. So this will happen if the demand increase is the stronger one. QE will go down when the supply decrease is the stronger one. And this will be equal if both are exactly equal to each other. Okay, fine. Moving on, number 3, we are combining 2 and 3. Number 2 and number 3 are getting combined now. Now try, don't look at the board, try to do on your own. What will happen if D goes down? Try to write it on your own and then match with the board. Correct? So now I once again have a definite answer. I think I should say because my internet students would want to hear. So once again, here you can see that PE will go down for sure. That's a definite answer because both are taking PE down. For QE, it is uncertain. QE can go up, QE can go down, or QE can stay same, unchanged, right? Then QE will go up when the supply increase is stronger. QE can go down if the demand decrease is stronger. And then QE will stay the same if both are exactly equal. Okay. So basically, if you remember these 4, you can combine them in the exam. You don't have to remember all that mess. This is your core. If you remember the core, you can combine and get to the answer in the others. You can apply that. So the last one, if you have a demand decrease, you have a decrease in equilibrium quantity and price. With supply decrease, you have a decrease in equilibrium quantity, but an increase in equilibrium price. Now once again, you have a definite answer for QE. QE goes down for sure. But you do not have a definite answer for PE. PE is ambiguous. PE can go up, PE can go down, or PE stays the same. And if you look at lecture note 2, there is a table at the end of the lecture which kind of summarizes all this, okay, all this information. So PE will go up provided the force that is taking it up is stronger. So the supply decrease must be stronger than the demand decrease. PE will go down if it's the other way around, demand decrease is stronger, and it will stay unchanged if both are exactly equal. Okay. So that means you can see that whenever supply and demand are changing in the same direction, that is 1 and 4, number 1 and number 4, I am talking about simultaneous shifts. Under simultaneous shifts, number 1 has demand and supply change in the same direction, right? Increase in both, right shift in both. Number 4 has left shift in both. Whenever that happens, you have a definite answer for quantity and you have a ambiguous answer for price. Similarly, if you have number 2 and 3, that is demand and supply change in the opposite direction in case of simultaneous shift, then you have a definite answer for price, but you have an ambiguous answer for quantity. Okay. So, when you do your studying for the exam, you should write those points down. Those are the things you should remember. After you have taken all this down, I will take 2 minutes to do just one of these in the diagram. One of the cases I will do in the diagram and show you why the diagram is not suited for doing this. After you have taken this down. If you don't want to take down, just take a picture. Did you follow? Did you kind of understand in class? You have to go over this time and again. It will not come easy to you. Okay. Now, let me draw a diagram for one of the cases. What happened?
I was going to take a picture.
Oh.
I've got it written down, it's fine.
Okay. And when you go home, try to rewrite it on another fresh sheet of paper and rewrite this several times, you know, because when you write this, this will get kind of engraved. Okay. Let me do number 1, okay, an increase in demand and an increase in supply. So, you have an initial demand curve, initial supply curve, okay. Now, if there is an increase in demand, goes to D dash, right? And I will try to show you 3 different cases for the supply, okay, because price can be 3 different ways. So, in the same way, if I just draw one supply curve, let us say I draw a supply curve like that, I am just doing one case where please note that I am drawing the supply shift as smaller than the demand shift, isn't it? I can draw something like this where the supply shift will be exactly the same, or you know, kind of the same as the demand shift. Or I can draw something like that where the supply shift will be way greater than the demand shift. Do you see what I am saying? And I could have done the same thing for the demand curve also, keeping the supplies constant. So, in that case, please note, in case of S2, my price is unchanged. S double dash price remains unchanged. Quantity is increasing because that is not a problem. In all cases, quantity is increasing. Everywhere the quantity is higher, no matter how you draw it. But in case of price, for S double dash, the price stayed constant. For S dash, the price went up. For S triple dash, the price went down. Please note, in case of S double dash, this is the situation, right? In case of S single dash, this is it. In case of S triple dash, that is the situation, right? So, I cannot capture everything with one shift. That is the reason I am asking you not to draw diagrams here.